Welcome to AgriTalk and thank you for keeping it KTN Farmers TV. Today we are talking about public health and food safety. And with me in studio today is Professor Peter Gathure, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi Department of Public Health, Pharmacology and Toxicology. Welcome to the show, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Kaitani.
When we talk about food safety and public health, what are we talking about exactly?
We are talking about the handling, preparation, and storage of food in such a manner that it is safe for human consumption. Obviously, it will depend on the type of food. If it is animal source food, it will have to be from an animal that has been inspected. If it is the meat, the quality of the meat, the meat will have been inspected. If it is milk, the quality of the milk will have been taken by competent authorities. And you know that food becomes unsafe when it is contaminated by either bacteria, by viruses, by parasites, and may also contain harmful toxins and even chemicals. For example, in this country, we have at times problems with aflatoxin, which is as a result of grains being contaminated by a fungus, and all this can lead to problems.
Okay. So where are we as a country when it comes to food safety?
When it comes to food safety, we are doing well in that both the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Livestock have directorates that deal with food safety. They have policies which are used to regulate the food industry. We have both the ministry and we also have the Kenya Bureau of Standards being the final authority as to matters food standards is concerned. So we are in very safe foods, especially in very safe hands, especially as far as the presence of the Kenya Bureau of Standards is concerned. Other bodies that are involved in food safety include KEPHIS, Kenya Plant Health Inspection Services. They will inspect any food of plant origin, and they will give the product either a clean bill of health or say it's unfit.
Okay. So what role does public health play in ensuring that our food is safe?
The public health departments, both of the veterinary and Ministry of Health, are charged with ensuring that the food that gets to the table is fit for human consumption. As I said earlier, food can be of animal origin or it can be of plant origin. And mainly for the food of animal origin, that is meat, we mainly are worried about zoonotic diseases, and these are diseases that are transmitted from animals to man and vice versa. We have in this country diseases like anthrax, we have Rift Valley fever, we have brucellosis, and many other zoonotic diseases that can infect man. And the role of the veterinary public health department is to ensure that the meat that gets to your table is free from those diseases.
Okay. Earlier on, you touched on aflatoxin.
Yes.
How do aflatoxin occur and how dangerous is it?
Aflatoxins are a result of the fungus Aspergillus flavus growing on moldy grain. When we have bumper harvests of maize, the farmers sometimes do not dry the maize properly, and we have growth of this particular fungus on the maize. And once the fungus grows, it elaborates a toxin called aflatoxin. And there are many types of aflatoxin. There are those that will pass to the human through milk. There are those that you consume directly from the grain, and those that enter other foods. Yes. And aflatoxin, if consumed in large quantities, can cause acute disease and can also cause chronic poisoning where we get liver cancer.
Okay.
Yes.
So how can we prevent aflatoxin from occurring?
The prevention of aflatoxin is by proper drying of grains. It is, the onus is on the receiving bodies. If it is a National Cereals and Produce Board, when it receives the grains from the farmers, they must ensure that the moisture content of the grain is a correct one that will not allow growth of the aflatoxin. Yes.
So it affects all the grains?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd also talked about, you had mentioned a few zoonotic diseases.
Right.
Maybe you can take us in details on, maybe you can pick a few.
Yes.
Tell us how they occur and how to prevent this so that farmers know what they need to do.
Currently, the pandemic we are dealing with of COVID-19 is actually a zoonotic disease, in that the first case of COVID-19 was reported from the Wuhan province of China. And when research was done, it was found that the source was an animal sold in the Wuhan wet market. A wet market, I can give you the example of Marigiti here, is where food is sold and you have grains, you have vegetables, you have meat, and in China and most of the Southeast Asian countries, even live animals, including snakes, snails, armadillos, etc. This particular case of COVID-19 is suspected either to have come from a bat or from an armadillo. It is not yet clear. In Kenya here, one of the most common cases of zoonotic disease is anthrax. Anthrax is caused by a bacterium called Bacillus anthracis. It affects cattle, where you find that your animal today was well, and it cuts milk in the evening, and the following morning you find a dead cow, so sudden death. And if a veterinarian or anybody makes the mistake of opening that carcass and even eating or even getting into contact, there are chances of developing anthrax, and anthrax cases can kill. We have 3 forms of anthrax. The intestinal, which occurs when we ingest, when we eat the meat or food contaminated by the bacteria. We have cutaneous anthrax when we touch the blood or any fluid from the animal. And we also have inhalation anthrax, which is the most deadly. And inhalation anthrax is actually used in germ warfare, where people can manufacture a lot of spores of anthrax, come and drop them over an area like Nairobi as a bomb. People inhale and they can get disease. So these zoonotic diseases, apart from affecting man, can also be used in biological warfare.
Okay.
Yes.
What are the symptoms and how can we dispose suspected anthrax carcasses? When
a veterinarian is called by a farmer and they find an animal has died as a result, as what we refer to as sudden death, is dead there, and anthrax carcasses normally bleed from the natural body orifices, that is the mouth. It will bleed from the ears and other openings. And once you see that carcass there, the cadaver, you should not open. What you do is you take a blood smear and confirm anthrax, and then advise either incineration, that is burning, or deep burial. And deep burial is 6 feet from the top of the cadaver. And then you burn the area on top where the carcass, the cadaver was lying.
Okay.
Yes.
So which other disease is deadly and how do we prevent them?
Rift Valley fever is deadly. Rift Valley fever normally occurs when we have flooding, and it is mainly occurring in the northeastern province, former northeastern province, Ijara district, Ijara area of Garissa County is a hotspot for Rift Valley fever. We also have brucellosis, which also is transmitted through drinking milk from an animal that had brucellosis. And here in Masai land, it's a very common problem. Na hata the Masais know about the disease. Ukiwauliza, wanasema niko na ile ugonjwa ya maziwa. They even know that it comes from milk. If you go to places like Turkana, the Turkanas even have names for diseases like anthrax. They call it enomokere. So if you hear Turkana saying this animal died of enomokere, it died of anthrax. And then we have diseases like plague. Yes, we know that during the early days of Nairobi, I think it was 1911, there was an outbreak of plague in the Indian Bazaar here in Nairobi. And the white man advised that the Indian Bazaar be burned to the ground. So it was burned to the ground, and Nairobi had to be rebuilt anew. Because during those days, plague was deadly. The antibiotics that we currently use for treatment of plague were not available. And therefore, if you got plague, you are the person dead. It was like a death announcement. Tuberculosis is also zoonotic. It can be transmitted through drinking of milk from cows infected with the bovine form of tuberculosis. Luckily, in this country, we do not have a lot of bovine tuberculosis.
Okay.
But neighboring Tanzania, Uganda, and Somalia have very many cases of the disease.
Okay.
Yes.
From a public health perspective,
yes.
When I'm preparing my animal for slaughter,
yes.
What do I need to know, or what do I need to, what do I need to follow?
Currently, we talk about farm to fork.
Yes.
And when it comes to meat animals, first of all, it is the feeding of that animal. Yes, out there in the farm, the animal should be well fed and vaccinated so that disease does not occur. After the animal has been fed and it has come to slaughter weight, then you put into motion the process of slaughter. And what is the process of slaughter? Today, if I want to take my animals to KMC for slaughter, the first place I'll go to is to the veterinary office in KMC and ask the veterinarian in charge to give me a no objection permit. The no objection permit will allow me to transport my animal from my farm in Laikipia to KMC. This means that he has no objection, and this means there is no disease in that area that would prevent animals from being brought. Once I get the no objection permit, I go to Laikipia, to the veterinary officer in Laikipia, and he gives me a movement permit. This will allow me to transport the animal to the slaughterhouse. At the slaughterhouse, we do what is called antemortem inspection. That is inspection of the live animal before it enters the slaughterhouse. After it has been inspected and allowed to come into the slaughterhouse, it goes into slaughter and it is inspected. After the inspection is done, the meat or the carcass is stamped with a roller mark indicating that that carcass has been inspected, and then it can be released for the market.
Okay.
Yes.
You talked about brucellosis. Brucellosis is mostly associated with milk, if I'm not right.
Yes, with milk.
Yes.
Yes.
So how do we make sure that the milk we drink at the end of the day is safe?
You boil the milk. Mm-hmm. For us here, literally, it's boiling the milk at home, and for the manufacturers, it's what we call pasteurization of the milk.
Okay.
The reason why we pasteurize milk is to kill the microorganisms that may cause disease in man,
Okay.
including the tuberculosis bacteria, brucellosis, and many others.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the diseases you've talked about, all the uh, what happens to animal to make it unsafe. Do we consider that as foodborne disease, or foodborne diseases are different from what you've just mentioned?
If the disease you contract is from eating or consuming an animal product, that is a foodborne disease. Meat is a food. Yes.
So any food that I eat and causes me problems,
Yes.
that is a foodborne disease.
That is a foodborne illness.
Okay.
Yes.
So also, how important is water when it comes to even growing our own food?
Water is very important because it is it can carry very many different types of bacteria. It can also carry parasites, and it can also contain harmful chemicals. And in this country, we have a major problem with fluoride in some areas of the country, where you get people with brown teeth. And in extreme cases, like in the north, in the Turkana, where the fluoride levels are very high, you get people who at times have spontaneous fractures of the long bones. A guy is just walking along the shore of the lake, and because the bones are weakened, the leg fractures without provocation. And this is because the fluoride in the water replaces the calcium in the bones, making the bones very weak.
Okay.
Of course, the mottling of the teeth, the browning of the teeth, is also a major issue. Lake Naivasha, Lake Nakuru here has very high levels. Boreholes within Nairobi area also have high levels of fluoride. So what we advise is that if you dig a borehole here, you use that water for cleaning and other purposes, and you use the city council water for drinking. Yes.
Okay. Could you be in a position to tell us how much we lose as a country in terms of treatment, when it comes to treatment of foodborne diseases?
I may not have the actual figure, but it is enormous. I said worldwide, foodborne diseases affect 550 million people. And annually, we have 250 deaths, 250,000 deaths per year resulting from foodborne diseases. And the unfortunate thing is that foodborne diseases mainly affect the very young and the very aged like us, those who are immunocompromised in one way or another, and those who are undergoing, maybe somebody has undergone a kidney transplant and he is on drugs to prevent rejection of the kidney, and therefore their immunity is lowered and they will easily get the diseases. Loss of disease or loss by disease is by purchase of the medicines, the man hours lost when the man is in hospital, when he should be doing productive work, and also agony to the family members. When a member of the family is sick in the hospital, the rest of the family can hardly function.
Okay. So when we talk about public health and food safety,
Yes.
if I go to a food market, what do I need to look at to make sure to just tell me that food being sold here might not be really that contaminated?
Of course, if you take Marigiti as an example, or Kawangware, or even toy markets, you look at the way the individual you are buying your food from is displayed. If he has a nice shelf where the produce don't touch the ground, then you have some element of trust. But the onus is on you when you get home to make sure that the food you eat is made safe by proper cooking and proper cleaning. We have a major issue with the salads because some of the vegetables that are sold in our markets are sourced from dubious farms where they use raw sewage for irrigation. If you go towards Ruai and even along the Nairobi rivers, you find nicely irrigated, nicely green spinach and kale, sukuma wiki. But when you take these products to the lab and test, we have found high levels of microorganisms of fecal origin. And some of these are very dangerous, like E. coli and even Salmonella.
Okay. Yes. We've had cases where some markets have been closed by the public health officials. Why? What are some of the reasons that will lead to a closure of a market?
The last time Margiti was closed, the size of the rats that were in that market were the size of cats. Yes? So that tells you a lot about why we close markets, because they are unhygienic. You find that the city council has the duty, the city council then had the duty of removing the trash and all the refuse from the market. But they don't. And again, our people are not blameless, because you find that I have a store here. I remove the trash and just throw it there, saying that the onus of removing the trash is on the city council. Of course, we expect services from the council or the county government because we pay them an amount so to do that work. But somewhere along the line, somebody is not doing their work. I know of incidences where the veterinary authorities have closed the Dagoretti slaughterhouses because they were unhygienic. And if you go to Dagoretti now, you will be amazed the transformation that has happened there. For example, now with COVID, nobody enters the slaughterhouse without a mask. Nobody enters the slaughterhouse without gumboots and a white overall and a kofia. And the operations are smooth. The multitude of people who used to flock the slaughterhouses are no longer there. Okay. They are very, very well controlled, the movement in and out of those facilities. Okay,
I also remember some time back, we had a drought.
Yes.
And a number of emaciated animals were taken to
KMC. Yes.
Could we have said that that meat would have been safe at the end of the season?
You see, the issue of emaciation and disease are not always related. If emaciation is due to drought and lack of food, then we do slaughter the animal, and those animals have lower grades. They are what we call manufacturing grades, and they are used to make canned meat and sausages. They will not go to high-class butcheries. So there is nothing wrong with the animal as long as it has no disease. Lack of weight. Si unakutana na kajamaa kamekonda, but he is still very strong. He doesn't have a disease, but he looks emaciated.
Okay.
So that's what happens with it.
Okay, let's take a short commercial break.
Yes.
And then we will be back shortly. For our viewers back at home, we are just taking a short commercial break, but we will be back in a few.